I now call the member for Solomon.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I rise to add my comments to the debate on the Migration Legislation Amendment, Offshore Processing and Other Measures Bill. The Northern Territory is currently the home to a significant number of asylum seekers housed within detention centres. Our community, like many others, feels the strain not only with the provision of services for the housing administration and processing of these people, but just as importantly, the social and health implications of detention. Now, let us be honest, the implication of boat arrivals, the impost on resources across the board and the divide on this issue across the nation are necessary considerations when formulating corrective actions to address this issue. Stopping the boats is but one segment of the overall issue. Beyond the boats, the need for effective, timely and stringent processes must be addressed to facilitate the processing of these people already in detention and additionally to set a roadmap for future arrivals. Public sentiment on this issue is broad. In my own electorate of Solomon, there is much concern, not just for the sheer number of boats and people arriving, but also for the expense associated with detention and also the detention centres themselves. There is a significant discontent across a broad sector of the community in terms of the disparity of expenses in detaining people, including the facilities provided and the level of access to taxpayer-funded services compared to those services accessed by local Australian citizens. The issue of asylum seekers, boat arrivals and people smuggling is about Australian sovereignty. It's about balancing the need for those who flee their homes and embark upon the often dangerous journey to travel here and to the broader Australian community, who remain compassionate to the honest seekers of asylum, but whose patience is waning and wish to see the end to the boats arriving. The Coalition welcomes the step down by this government for accepting that previous models such as Nauru remain pivotal in the implementation of a solution to address the issues of boat arrivals. The Gillard Labor Government dismantled practices set in place by the Howard Government, practices for the management of boats which were proven to work. The arrogance of this government to simply dismantle practices that worked without consideration of the long-term implications, both socially and fiscally, reflects absolute incompetence. Blame for the current situation sits squarely at the feet of the government of the day and indeed with Prime Minister Gillard. Constituents of mine remain deeply angered at how in a few short years the instances of boat arrivals have gone through the roof and billions of dollars are now being spent to fund the necessary measures to save, detain and process those arriving illegally on boats. Additionally, once the boats started arriving again and the business of people smuggling ramped up, and without a strategic plan, the Gillard Labor governments dug their collective toes in about Nauru, not for the benefit of Australians but for political one-upmanship. We had the Timor option and then the Malaysia solution, yet in 4 years, with all the rhetoric from this Gillard Labor government, has one boat been stopped? Have the number of boat arrivals fallen? Has the trade of people smuggling diminished? The answer to all three questions is no. The boats keep coming, almost with the regularity of a Manly ferry. The budget associated with the issues continues to climb uncontrollably, ensuring that funds for other existing and prospective measures to build our nation remain on the back burner or poorly implemented. It's the Gillard Labor government that has delivered more detention beds than hospital beds in my electorate, hospital beds that are desperately needed. It's this Gillard Labor government that promised affordable housing for my electorate, yet the only housing it has provided has been housing for detainees. in the various detention centres purposely built in my electorate. To use a past well-worn quote from Prime Minister Gillard, moving forward, the opportunity now exists for the Gillard Labor Government to address the wrongs of the past 4 years and implement measures to stop the boat. This includes offshore processing at Nauru. It's disappointing that to get to this point that we are here today, here in this place debating this issue, it took a report by experts, an expert panel on asylum seekers which made 22 recommendations for this government to act responsibly and formulate a way forward. It's with mixed emotions, including sadness and anger, that I add to this debate. I'm saddened by the significant loss of life over the past 4 years with the transit of illegal boats. Angered that lives were lost while this government failed to act by implementing strategies to stem the flow of boats and diminish the potential for loss of life. But I'm pleased and confident that now, at least, a plan is at hand and that the future in terms of asylum seeker arrivals by boat and the business of people smuggling may finally be on the right path, a path to put a stop to the illicit business of putting boatloads of people at sea. The Prime Minister should swallow her pride and apologise if she wasn't so stubborn. The human cost for Labor's failed border protection policies could have most likely been avoided. For 4 years, she has said offshore processing at Nauru would not work. Despite the evidence of 22,000 illegal arrivals, 1,000 or almost 1,000 deaths at sea, and damages to Australia's international reputation and a $4.7 billion blowout in costs, the Prime Minister Gillard refused to change course. Despite the evidence that Prime Minister Gillard had, she did what she could do to trash the Coalition's assertions that offshore processing at Nauru was good policy, claiming it wouldn't work and would cost billions to reopen. The Prime Minister has now reluctantly accepted one part of the Coalition's plan for stronger borders. The Coalition will support the legislation to allow offshore processing, but knows the government consistently mismanages the implementation of projects. With over 1,600 spin doctors on their books, the Gillard Labor Government knows how to spin and make announcements, but they have consistently failed at managing the implementation of major policies. Let's look at pink bats, school halls and the NBN are all reminders of a government that can spend more but not manage projects. Even now, the government are reluctantly reopening Nauru but are refusing to implement the other two proven border protection policies, that is, temporary protection visas and turning around the boats where it's safe to do so. The Coalition has consistently argued for proven policies that work and strengthening Australia's borders. The Coalition's policies on border protection have been proven to work, and in the past they've destroyed the people smuggler model. The fact is, without the full implementation of the suite of the Howard government policy outcomes, it will be unlikely the same level of protecting a 99% reduction in boat arrivals is unlikely. The Coalition understands that the Howard government solutions worked then and they'll work again. We'll reintroduce offshore processing at Nauru because the rights of asylum seekers will be protected. We'll return a system of temporary protection visas because people will be safe but not guaranteed permanent residencies with all the benefits that go with it. And as we know, there can be circumstances where boats can be turned back safely, as Sri Lanka and Indonesian authorities have shown, because the people smugglers' business model needs to be broken. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.